And sometimes when we're working with partners who are a little bit smaller, shall we say they've got 3,000 people on their list, they'll sometimes have a list where they know that list more intimately. The list is small enough that if people reply to an email they sent, they've actually got the bandwidth to reply to those people. They have the ability to engage directly. They know some of the people on their list.
Mm.
So we've seen this with quite a few launches where we'll have partners who are, maybe have 3 or 4 thousand people, and they'll get much better results than people who've got lists that are 10 times that size.
You are listening to Amplify Your Success Podcast, episode 353. And today we're going to discover how to create amazing business growth with JV partnerships. You ready for this? Let's get started. Welcome to the Amplify Your Success Podcast. Get ready to ramp up your revenue, amplify your impact, and make your mark in the world. This is the show for experts, thought leaders, and service professionals who want to shatter their limits and achieve that next level. You're going to find out from other experts and influencers how they made it. Now, let's get amplified. Hey there, inspired entrepreneurs and business leaders. It is your host, Melanie Benson, authority amplifier to expert-based entrepreneurs and a possibility igniter for those that are ready to make a greater impact and scale their business in the process. And speaking of scaling, JV partnerships are absolutely a tried and true proven strategy. I like to call it collaboration, but call it whatever you want. When you are aligning with other people, this is how you skyrocket your business quickly. I could tell you so many stories about how the right partnerships, the right collaborations literally opened doors that just flew open and opened up or tapped me into, I guess you could say, a great audience of new buyers. And I tend to speak of it in collaboration. So if you have my free 7-step framework to add another 100,000 or more to your business this year, I talk about the collaboration. By the way, if you do not have that, you can get your free download at amplifywithmelanie.com. I highly recommend you stop and do that right now if you haven't yet, because that framework, it needs all of those pieces working for any of the topics that we cover here in the podcast to work well for your business. So amplifywithmelanie.com. That is also linked up in the show notes. JV partnerships are one type of collaboration that I think are very powerful for business growth. And we have a guest today joining us to talk about how he's helped identify and facilitate powerful JV partnerships and how you can learn from his success. You ready for this? Let's get into the episode. Welcome back, Amplifiers. We're talking about creating amazing growth and opening doors to new audiences through JV partnerships. And my guest today is Danny Bermant. Now, Danny is somebody I've been working with on and off for a while, and he's just so extraordinary at what he does. It's such a great approach to JVs. But let me give him an official introduction. He is the Director of Partnerships for a company you may have heard about, Miracy. And Danny is responsible for driving their business growth through joint ventures. And he typically is managing multiple 6-figure launches throughout the year. Now, Danny's passion is people, and that I could just say firsthand, that definitely shows. He's the nurturer of professional relationships, is the way his friends call him, Captain JV. I don't know, Danny, I've never called you Captain JV, but I can see why. He's a prolific networker, and he's working with some of the biggest names in marketing and coaching. And he built a sizable network of over 4,000 contacts across every major industry. Danny, I'm excited to dig into this with you today.
Thank you for having me on, Melanie. It's great to speak to you.
Yeah, it's no short feat or no small feat to try and coordinate between Europe and California time zones. So we'll give ourselves a round of applause for making it happen, right?
Yeah, and Australia more often than not.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Well, we may have that come up as well. So let's talk about, I want to take a step back before we get into JVs, because I'm always fascinated how someone steps into this role of being a JV manager and is paid for this really unique and, great talent of being a connector. So how did you get into this?
I've been working in marketing for over 20 years, and over the course of that time, the way I've gone about bringing clients on board has always been about networking and going to meet, going to meet like-minded businesses who work with similar clients.
Mm.
So that's just something that has been occurring naturally. But more recently, I have been more interested in the whole process of joint ventures as a really effective way of bringing on new clients. Because if you look at advertising, it can be very effective in terms of identifying your target audience. But think of finding a right audience as a Venn diagram. You've got Facebook. Facebook will find an audience for you, and that there's a mass of people, and then you've got your ideal clients, and there'll be some overlap between your people and the people that Facebook will find for you. But that will never ever be as effective as meeting a business owner who has got a similar audience with similar desires, similar aspirations, similar dreams. And so, ultimately, JV partnerships is not only much more effective in advertising, but it's also a much more rewarding way of bringing new business on board because instead of paying a lot of money, you are working with someone who has got, really similar aspirations to you, someone who you like, who you trust, who you want to work with, who you want to help. And as a result, they want to help you as well.
Mm.
So it's a really fun way of bringing on board new business.
Yeah. And to me, it's that ultimate collaborative approach to growth. When two or more are gathered, there's an exponential opportunity to make an impact and make money. So I love the whole collaborative growth opportunity that's very popular. And I'm not a big Facebook ad fan. I find JV partnerships so much more fun and enjoyable to you know
And they're
put into
warmer.
action. And
They are
they're
much
what?
they're much warmer because at the end of the day,
Yes.
uh, the people coming on board through social media ad know nothing at all about you. Whereas with a referral or with a joint venture promotion, it's someone who has been endorsed. Someone else has endorsed you to their list, saying, "Listen, this is someone who I know. I think their program or I think their training is going to be really effective for what you're trying to achieve." It's a very different dynamic.
It's so true. I'm glad you brought that up. Well, I talk to people and I try to inspire my clients and my audience all the time to put JVs together, right? Put strategic partnerships together. And oftentimes people say, I don't think I'm ready. So, what would be your advice to someone who maybe is on the fence about it or considering it? How does someone know they're ready to start doing some proper joint ventures?
When people say I'm not ready, it'll often be because they are developing an offer that's still evolving. It's not kind of finished. They may also feel that their audience is still quite small, and obviously small is a relative term. I've had
Mhm.
people with several thousand in their audience who say I've got a very small audience. So very often in my experience, when people say I'm not ready, it's imposter syndrome. They feel they're I think that concern also is that people are going to want to promote them. So they'll say, hold on a second, I'm not ready yet. I don't have my offers not fully developed. But actually you're really missing a trick there because even if, let's just say for the sake of argument, your offer is a few months away from being fully developed, what's to stop you from, in the meantime, promoting others? Because during that period where you're developing your offer, you have an opportunity to support other people with what they're doing. And when you are ready, if you like, when you're JV ready, those people will be ready to promote you back. So you've got this window of time. Use it.
Yeah, I think that's dead on. And I would say one of the things I hear sometimes is people say, "Well, I don't know, like my list is really small." Like, why would somebody want to partner up with me? So, is that a problem for people if they have a small list?
What I find really fascinating is when you're on Zoom, you see people's body language.
Mhm.
So when I'm meeting a new partner, I will always ask them, can you give me just a rough idea of your list size? And I can kind of see this kind of awkward facial expression.
Shrink.
Oh, do I have to answer this question? And normally the response will either be something like, oh, I've got a very small list, which is relative. What do you mean by small? And the second thing that they'll say is, Well, I had 5,000 people, but I recently had to cull my list, so it's now only 3,000. The list size actually does not matter as much as you think. The what's much more of interest to us at Miracy is how engaged is your list. And sometimes when we're working with partners who are a little bit smaller, shall we say they've got 3,000 people on their list, they'll sometimes have a list where they know that list more intimately. The list is small enough that if people reply to an email they sent, they've actually got the bandwidth to reply to those people. They have the ability to engage directly. They know some of the people on their list.
Mm.
So we've seen this with quite a few launches where we'll have partners who are, maybe have 3 or 4,000 people, and they'll get much better results than people who've got lists that are 10 times that size. So I would say don't be intimidated by the fact that you feel your list isn't big enough. What should be much more concerning is how engaged is your audience and how aligned is your audience with the person you want to work with.
Yeah, I want to unpack that a little bit more because, with email deliverability and many of the practices that people are starting to adopt of cleaning their lists very aggressively, which is what we do, my list is always a little bit smaller, but it's very optimized. It's very engaged. And the people that stay are people who really believe in what I do and they want to stay connected. And so I find that I often can get better results and better sales and better leads to my partners than people who have these huge lists with people who are maybe micro aligned. they're kind of on the fringes or not really buyers. So I'm glad that you said that. How would you define a small list versus like a really healthy size list? Do you have a number in mind when you're looking at list size?
When people say their list is small, they're usually talking about 10,000 or less.
Hmm.
Although I'd say for probably 90% of our partners, even 10,000 is a lot, would be large for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I see again and again and again, it's often those people who've got those small lists who have much more intimacy with their audience. Just think about it. You've got 30,000 people on your list. How intimate can you be? And you've got to work a lot harder to keep that list engaged. And very often what you'll see when you look at the results of different list sizes, you'll often see that the level of sales relative to the list size will be higher with a small list than a large list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well
So
said.
don't worry about this size. And
Right.
also, we're not unusual in that we do not turn down partners who've got 2 or 3,000 people on their list. So it's also thinking about the long term. There are lots of JV partners who will be interested in you, and they're looking at the long term relationship. They're thinking, great, okay, you've got 3,000 people on your list, you've got an engaged list, but we're looking at whether if your list is engaged, we want to work with you over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, and your list is going to grow.
Yeah, you said a magic word a few minutes ago too about alignment, which I think is a part that many people forget to really explore. And so tell me, why does alignment matter and how would somebody know if a partner is a good fit for them?
I think there are 3 things that you have to be aware of when you're looking at a partner. The first thing is, do you feel comfortable with them? It seems like a really obvious question, but is this someone you feel comfortable working around? There's some people who you will meet with who are aggressive, or they seem to be either, or if they're not aggressive, they seem to be people who are a little bit, don't seem to know much about their list. So there are various, there'll be various cues that they'll give, which make you lack confidence in them in terms of either knowing what they're doing or just altogether feeling comfortable about working with them. I think the second thing you need to find out about is who are their people, right? And that means actually taking the time to meet when you're meeting a partner, not scheduling a 15-minute call, but actually thinking more about 30 or even 45 minutes to really dig deep and say, like, what is your avatar? As in, tell me about your audience. What are their, like, what keeps them awake at night, right? What keeps them in despair? What are they trying to solve? Where do they want to be? Where are they 6 months after working with you? Those are things that you really need to know about, because you need to know, are your people my people? or is what they're trying to get, is where they're trying to get to, similar to where my audience are trying to get to. So I think that is enormously important, understanding, who your people are. It's also understanding whether the offer is a fit. And you need to think, for example, if you are, let's just say you're meeting with somebody who is essentially selling fairly low ticket offers. It may be they're selling a $50 product or something, and they generally, it's generally short courses they offer. It's low dollar offers, and you're selling a $5,000 offer, and that's your kind of your entry level program. So you need to think, does the offer fit? Are the people in this audience going to basically be interested in what I have to offer? And something else I'd say about offers, I mean, that's one example. It's also about all the sort of things that they have in that offer going to be something that my audience are likely to be interested in. So you will sometimes have, unfortunately, a situation where partner one, their people love what you do, but what you do may not be as interesting to the other direction, and that's fine. But those are the sort of things you need to do. You need to do a bit of due diligence, and that means just slowing down and spending a bit more time really getting to know your partner, getting to know their people, getting to know that offer.
Mm. I'm glad you broke those down into those three pieces. And again, like I think it doesn't always have to be going both directions. And there's, by the way, there's so many ways you can support a partner that may not look like you're emailing to their list. You can make introductions. You can interview them on their podcast because maybe there's something that'd be really juicy for your show, but maybe not necessarily like sharing your offer to their list. So I think if you really dig into it, there's lots of ways to create some win-win outcomes if that partner isn't necessarily a good fit to share them with your audience. Would you agree?
Correct. I think a lot of business owners are quite transactional in the way that they approach joint ventures. Several months ago, I actually met with a business owner who said, I don't really like JVs because it's you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And my response to that is like, wait, hold on a second. That is not what JVs are about at all. It's very much about giving value in advance and actually saying, what can I do to support you? And it's understanding that the way they might support you may not, it may be very different. So correct, it may be that you're able to support their launch and promote them, and they may reciprocate by putting you in front of some really powerful JV partners. So it's just taking a much longer, instead of constantly thinking, what's in it for me? It's just looking at the larger picture. I want to just share an experience from many years ago. I used to be part of a BNI chapter. And what would very often happen is, there'd be a lawyer in the chapter, there'd be a mortgage broker, there'd be a financial advisor. But what will sometimes happen is there's sort of an ecosystem where you will refer business to the financial advisor. Financial advisor will be working with the mortgage broker. The mortgage broker will be working with the lawyer. The lawyer may refer business back to you. So it's just realizing it's not necessarily you promoting someone, then promoting you back. There's a much larger ecosystem at work. And if you look at it that way, you'll have a very good experience.
Yeah, not to mention just the pure energy of being someone who's giving.
Mm-hmm.
It changes things, right? And sometimes it's not a direct line between you and that person. Like there are other ways that those partnerships pay off, right? And so it's like looking at the big vision rather than just like getting in the weeds of like, hey, this has to be a transaction that goes both ways. So I'm grateful you brought that up. And I also will just say, I think a lot of JV experts teach a model that's very transactional. And so that might be part of why that starts to proliferate in our industry. And it's why I love supporting you is like you are such a powerful JV connector that you are looking to add value, whether it's a direct line back or not. So I think
Thank
you
you.
stand for JVs doing the right way or going the right way, I should say.
Yeah. I think you're correct. It's what's taught is typically a very transactional approach, and this whole concept of giving value in advance, and rather than jumping straight away to say, "Can you?" And I've had that quite a few times, people just jumping straight away. They'll meet you and straight away say, "Can you promote me?" It's just slowing down a bit, and saying, okay, starting off by actually asking the question, what can I do to support you? And I have to say, 99% of the time, when you do that, it naturally invites a response back where they say, that's great, thank you for all the support you're giving me. What can I do to help you?
Absolutely. So I hope we've inspired people at this point to step into the JV partnership world and to start to create some. If you were talking to somebody, let's imagine somebody's on the other end of this podcast listening, going, "Okay, Danny, I'm ready. What would you tell them to do right now to get started?"
Well, the first thing is looking at where are your people, right?
Mhm.
So it may be that you are a business coach. So where are you currently? Firstly, where are you meeting your audience? But also, where do you feel most comfortable meeting your audience? And are there people in those spaces that you can work collaboratively with? Now, with the joint ventures that we both get involved in are often to do with the fact that you've got a launch or a webinar or an event that your audience, that your partner is promoting. But it can take other forms. So it could, for example, be that there is a business that's aligned with you, and they might be referring people to you. But it's just identifying who else, where you go to meet, whether it's a chamber of commerce, whether it's whether it might be an online social media group. Where are you going to meet your clients, and who inhabits those spaces, who is basically very much in harmony with your business, and you can look at supporting each other. I've seen joint ventures, anything from simple referrals to things like joint events, where I've seen a financial advisor, a lawyer, a mortgage broker basically hosting a joint event where they basically together promote the event to their audience, and then they've got a whole range of people turning up. So just start having conversations with people in those spaces to explore how you can support each other.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is initiate. Find people who serve your similar audience and talk about like what would it look like if we were to help each other access our audiences or access referrals in some way, shape, or form. And so take it from the, okay, there's these random people out there and getting very intentional about it.
Yeah, one thing I would say is you need to have structure. So if you are meeting businesses that are aligned with yours, sit down to think about how can this work. So let's say, for the sake of argument, you both got existing clients, or you've got a LinkedIn network. Have a plan, such as, why don't we sit down and look at each other's audiences? Who do we both work with who we think will be a good referral for you? So don't say, like, who do you know? Right? Who do you know who you can refer me to? Who do you That doesn't work. You actually have to be specific. Can we sit down together? Who are Show me some of the people you work with, and I can tell you who would be a good fit for me. Or and actually, again, put yourself forward. Say, listen, here are some people I work with who I think would be a good fit. Why don't we sit down and look at that, and maybe you going through your network with them, and then them doing the same the next time. And in fact, that is the way. One of the ways that I work with JV partners is periodically sitting down with them and saying, listen, here are some people, here are some amazing people who I love working with. I think they'd be a good fit for you. And JV partners I work with will do the same. It's a really easy way to find partners.
Yeah, you've done that with me and it's been I love it. Like I love how you put how do I add value first and like how do we co-create something that these people may not have actually ever crossed paths or those connections may never have been formed before. So that's great. Okay, so I'm thinking like our listener who's maybe not done this or they've tried it and it didn't work well. And I'm thinking of the questions that may be coming up for them right now. One of the questions that I think could be coming up is um, how important is the offer I have to making this kind of partnership work? Because I think a lot of people like maybe they have an offer, they don't know if it'll work well in a partnership arrangement. Like, how important is the offer in terms of defining good partnerships?
Obviously, having a strong offer that sells is obviously going to be much easier. Um, a lot of partners, what they start off doing is before they start taking that offer out there, is they start promoting it internally first. So they've
Mhm.
got their own audience. They will test that on their own audience and see what the response is before they then roll it out. The other thing I would say is the other way to test your offer is don't start running around talking to lots and lots of partners. Initially focus on a small number of two, three, four partners that you can test your offer and find out what works. And don't worry if an offer bombs. That happens. At Miracy, not every single launch that we run is a huge success. We test new ideas. Sometimes they're a huge success. Sometimes they're not. So don't be don't have. There's a danger that the fear of failure means that you never get that offer out there. You're constantly looking to perfect it. Right? Get the offer out. The only way you're going to know if it works or not is by actually working with partners and testing the water.
Yeah,
And
glad you said that.
yeah,
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like Miracy's brilliant at helping people with designing really good courses. And so that's one of Miracy's specialties, Danny Any. If you are not familiar with Miracy, but you may have heard of Danny Any before. And I think Danny's amazing at what he does. As a matter of fact, like, why don't we just take a pause here? I've got a couple more fun questions, but let's take a pause here. I'd love it if you could share like a way for people to learn more about Miracy and the work you guys are doing there. What would be a good first step?
yeah. So the easiest thing to do is to go to miracy.com. That's mirasee.com. You can find out more about what we do, and you have a whole host of free resources that you can access. If you just go to miracy.com/resources, there are a whole number of courses that you can take. In fact, right at the top of the page is the hybrid course bootcamp, which you can sign up to. It's absolutely free. So that's a really good place to start in terms of building your first course.
Yeah, and I've taken that one in the past when Danny first put that out. It's really good. So if you are looking to create courses that sell well and to be super attractive and perform well with partners, I highly recommend you go check that out. And by the way, get on their email list. They write, I mean, you guys write the best emails. I love reading all your stuff. You guys are one of the partners that I pretty much read everything you guys send out. So you guys do so many amazing things. So let's have fun and get to know you a little bit more. We know you're a JV manager and you've been doing this for a while. And I like to kind of take a step back in time and think about you've probably had to make some bold choices along the way or do some bold things to get where you are today. What would you say is the boldest thing you ever had to do to amplify the success of your work in the world?
Well, the COVID was a huge had a huge impact on me. I'm an extrovert, but probably took
Mhm.
me a while to realize that. And actually, COVID, I think for many of us who, even those of us who are introverts, found the COVID lockdown very difficult. But for me, it was a wake up call because I've worked in marketing my entire career, but my focus has mainly been on basically sitting behind a computer screen, managing managing ads, managing email campaigns, and being so isolated from people made me realize at the age of 48 that actually I really needed to change and do something that was very, very focused around people and relationships. The area of business that fascinates me is the whole business of relationships. And I think very often sales, business development has a very bad name because it's perceived to be really about you trying to somehow manipulate somebody else. Whereas I've always seen the whole sales process is actually about you putting yourself out to support people, to help people. What you're doing is you're trying to find out what people are struggling with, and then you put your hand out to them and say, "Is this something that you'd like help with?" If people don't want help, they can obviously say no, and if they say yes, you can then then walk them through a way to improve their business, improve their life.
Hmm. So COVID really was a transformational time for you then.
Absolutely.
Mm.
I don't think I would have made this bold a change had it not been for the fact the months of isolation that endured, following March 2020.
Mm. Yeah, I think many of us can relate to that.
Well,
I,
yeah,
I
and
definitely remember going through a period of thinking like I need to see people, but you couldn't see people. And even though I have a family, I wanted to see people in my work world. And that's how I get fed. That's how my soul gets nourished is, having lunch or having like those enriched conversations. So I could see how that would be so
yeah, and I
hard.
think it's something that we need to learn again, that we have unlearned during the pandemic, is the importance of meeting in person.
Hmm.
I was at JVX Live in October, and it was the most fantastic experience because when you're in the same, you can do a hell of a lot of stuff remotely, but there's a level of interaction, and there's a level of the fact that you are really tuned into people, and there's a level of intimacy of conversation you just cannot recreate remotely. You can try and artificially create it, but it's just not the same.
Yes, it is true. Yes, there are conversations you have in real life and a way of being with each other that is not you can't it's not possible to do it over Zoom. It's better than nothing, but it's not the same. You're right. Okay, looking back from today into the past, is there one thing you wish you would have done sooner because now you know how impactful it was to the
Mhm.
success of your work?
Yeah, I think it's important to. I think sometimes when you are doing, when you're going, sometimes you're going down a particular direction, and something tells you this is not working, and sometimes it's easy to just carry on. And I know the example I'm giving is to do, the pandemic. I think you need to sometimes listen to yourself and say it's okay to change direction. Very often
Yeah.
people are. It's the there's the saying, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. But actually, no. Very often in life, it's actually better the devil you don't know. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
So don't be afraid to pivot because sometimes that pivot is going to take you somewhere you need to go that you never would have imagined for yourself. That's what I read
Correct.
between the lines of what you just said.
Correct. I have, I host the Making It podcast at Miracy, and I talk to entrepreneurs about their journey.
Yeah.
And I see that again and again where they have pivoted. And more often than not, they're pivoting out of, they pivot out of necessity in the end, but then they discover, why didn't I do that earlier? In fact, what I find fascinating is you kind of imagine when you meet entrepreneurs, it's like, I wanted to be an entrepreneur since I was 5. Not at all. It's so many of the people I've interviewed are people who basically never thought about being an entrepreneur. They went down a particular path, and then it just was the right thing to do at a certain time. Very often they what they're doing wasn't working. They discovered something else. They started working with somebody, and they became an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Such great wisdom there. Danny, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for being such a great catalyst for partnering up in our community and helping people co-create new opportunities because that's really what we're doing is like we're expanding opportunity when we do JVs. So thank you. And as you're
really.
listening in, I highly recommend you go check out miracy.com. I'll link that up in the show notes because I know you may not know how to spell that. So don't worry, just look in the show notes wherever you're listening to this and you'll find the link to go check out their programs. Thanks, Danny.
Thank you, Melanie. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for tuning in today, Amplifier. Be sure to join us right now in the Amplify Your Authority community at authorityamplifiers.com, and I'll share my 7 proven tips to be a highly paid expert that stands out in a crowded market. Plus, we're going to keep this conversation going, and I want to hear from you how you're going to amplify your authority and make a greater impact. Before you go, please take a minute to give our show and our guests some love over on your favorite podcasting platform. Subscribe, rate, and review. Leave your full name, and I'll spotlight you and your authority on social media.